Let's look at a different type of relationship. This type of relationship is actually between two entities, and the entities are same. So like recursion. So that is why it is also called as recursive relationship. I'll just show you what with an example. Let us say we have employee only, and every employee according to the specifications I'm talking about it. Let us say the specifications are an employee is going to have a boss, and that boss might have some boss, right? So every employee is supposed to report to at least one person, and we can call them as subordinate and boss, or supervisor and supervisee, something. And every employee is supposed to have, let us say, at least one supervisor, right? And if that is the case, right, so employee is going to have a supervisor, and some employee, at least one employee or some employees are not going to have supervisors. Generally they are the CEOs, right? And every company is going to have all the employees listed. Even a CEO is also an employee who doesn't report to anyone, right? Now I want to represent this particular relationship. The interesting thing about this relationship is both the participating entities are they belong to the same entity type, which means employee. An employee is going to manage some other employee. Till now we have seen an employee managing a department or employee working on a project, which means there are two types of entity types, and the relationship is among these two types. But from now we are going to discuss about this thing. An employee is actually managing some other employee, right? So it is interesting in that way. So watch it. Even though it is only one entity type, I'm going to write it two times. Don't get confused. So if I write it only one time and then put the relationship between them, it will be really confusing. Just to avoid confusion, I'm just going to elaborate it. But then when we represent it in the ER diagram, I'll again combine them, right? So even though I'm writing this set, the same type, entity type, two times, don't get confused. It is actually only one entity type. I'm writing the same entity type two times. Okay. Let us assume that employee right? So this is actually only one entity type, but I am representing it two times, right? So one time this employee, this particular set or this particular employee type is going to have a role in this relationship, and he is going to act as, let us say, supervisor. Supervisor means he is the boss, right? And the other side, he is going to act as, the other side employee set, it is going to act as supervisee. Okay, so it is like boss and subordinate. That is the way I'm using the roles, right? So this side it is the boss, and that side it is the subordinate. And now the relationship is, you can give any meaningful name. Let us say the relationship name is supervisors. Any name you can give, supervisors, which means this particular employee supervises that particular employees, right? Now there are employees here, and other side also there are employees. There are employees here, right? Assume that the specifications are like every employee reports to only one employee, right? Which means you are not going to have two bosses. Every employee can have only one employee, and every employee except one or two or except few are going to have the bosses, the supervisors, right? Therefore, if you are going to report to someone, you'll be reporting to only one. That is the meaning of it, right? So this particular employee is going to supervise this particular employee, right? As well as the same employee might be supervising some other employee, right? And the same employee might be supervising some other employee, like this. And one thing is, maybe let's not put this one. This might have a different meaning, in the sense, if it is E1 and if it is E1, you might think that E1 is supervising E1 itself. That is why E1 and E1 we didn't keep it. Now what is the meaning of it? E1 is supervising E2 and E1 is supervising E3. Therefore E2 reports to E1 and E3 reports to E1. Employee number 2 reports to employee number 1 and employee number 3 reports to employee number 1. If you want employee number 1 also to report to someone, right? Let us say somewhere there is E4 and employee number 1 reports to E4 or E4 supervises E1. Then how is the relationship here? See this, E2 and E3, they are reporting to E1 and E1 is actually reporting to E4. Are you understanding this? See, E1 is supervising E2 and E3. E1 is supervising E2 and E3 and E4 is supervising E1. E4 is supervising E1. That is the hierarchy, isn't it? So somehow you can represent the relationship on two entity types which are actually the same, right? In that case it is called as recursive relationship. This particular relationship is called as recursive relationship. What is the degree of it? How many entities are participating in every relationship? Two entities. Therefore the degree is obviously 2. Degree of the relationship is actually 2, right? The degree is 2, that is fine. And what about the cardinality? So cardinality of each side. So cardinality will actually be derived from the specification, that requirement analysis. Let us say from requirement analysis, the cardinality you found out is an employee has to, it is not sure that, or it is not always necessary that every employee has to manage someone, right? And moreover, an employee, in case if he is managing some employees, he might manage one or more, right? Then as supervisor, how many relationships can each entity participate here? As a supervisor, an entity can participate in many relationships, right? Therefore the cardinality is nothing but maximum participation. So maximum participation is n. Are you getting this? An employee here as a supervisor can participate in more than one relationship. Therefore the cardinality, which is nothing but the maximum participation, is going to be n. Now what about this one, supervisee? An employee here has to be managed by only one supervisor, right? Therefore it is 1. What is the meaning of it? Maximum, you can be managed by only one boss. You cannot be managed by more than one boss. So how did I get that? From the specifications only, right? And now next one is participation. So participation says what is the minimum number of relationships an entity can participate in. So if you are looking at a supervisor, is it always guaranteed that every employee has to act as a supervisor? Not necessary, right? Therefore the minimum, which means from this side the participation can be 0. The minimum can be 0, which means there can exist an employee who will never participate in any relationship, which means an employee might never manage any other employee or might never supervise any other employee. He is just a bottom level employee, right? And what about the other one? What about the minimum participation here? The participation here, every employee, it is not always necessary that every employee need to have a boss also, right? The reason is there might be CEO who is also an employee who might not have a boss, who might not have a supervisor, right? Therefore let us say 0. So participation here is partial and the participation here is partial. Got it? Now how can we write this? This is a relationship and the relationship is supervisors, okay? And on both the sides we are going to have the same entity type, and the entity type is employee, right? And one side it is going to act as supervisor. This is the role on one side, and the other side is going to act as supervisee, right? And then what is relationship? What type of relationship is it? Is it 1 to n or n to n, like that, right? What about the cardinality? See, now we have seen that on the supervisor side, so from supervisor to supervisee, it is a one to many relationship, right? Therefore here I am going to write 1 and here I am going to write n. Are you getting this? It means that a supervisor can have many supervisors, so it is one to many relationship, right? Now if you want to write the same thing in min-max representation, now how many minimum relationships can supervisor side participate in? 0. And how many maximum can supervisor participate in? N. What about this? How many minimum can supervisee participate in? 0. And how many maximum can he participate in? 1, right? This is the min-max representation. I mean without these numbers this is the min-max representation, and with the lines it is a representation. Anyway, nowhere we are going to have total participation. That is why it is just single lines. Got it? It might be it is actually a different case in the sense there is a difference in how we represent this one with the roles. These are called as roles, right? The role is also represented it is just a bit different from the ordinary binary relationships, right? Anyway, it is also a binary relationship and it is called a recursive relationship. Even though it is called recursive, it is still binary only, right? Why? Because only two entities are participating in every relationship here. Okay, fine.